Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of our Kontext Coffee Chat. And I'm very happy to welcome back Mike Mamo from Addis Exporters, one of our Ethiopian partners. We had a two-part Kontext Coffee Chat with you before, Mike, where we talked mostly a little bit about your work as Addis Exporter, but back then you introduced us to the Tokuma farmer group, which was really interesting and just really exciting. And today I would like to welcome you back to give us a little update on what you've been up to, especially seeing that this year we actually bought one of your lots from one of your new washing stations. So welcome back and thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure having a conversation with you, and I look forward to this talk.
Great. All right. Well, then fill us in. What have you been up to? Or maybe start with a bit of a broader picture of what you actually do as Mike Mamo of Addis Exporters. What is Addis Exporters all about?
Okay. Addis Exporter is a family-owned Ethiopian coffee exporting company, which was established by my father 52 years ago now. I'm the managing director of Addis Exporter. Our primary business is exporting coffee, but we also work as a service provider for smallholder farmers. We also run washing stations. We're also millers. So that's my main role for Addis Exporter, and also involved in other aspects of the coffee industry.
Yeah, so basically you do it all from the coffee plant to bringing the coffee into coffee shops all over the world. You're involved in all the bits.
I tried little bits of everything.
Great. All right. Well, I asked you on this call mainly because as I mentioned, we bought one of your lots from your brand new washing stations this year. We bought the Vanya Kersa, and correct me if I don't pronounce this correctly. Yes, I apologize. So I thought you could tell us a little bit about your expansion and your future plans as well for how you envision your Ethiopian coffee future.
Thanks. So Wanjak Arsa is coming from our new washing station called Atoma. It's our second washing station. The first one is Talila, they're both located in Gera district. But Ketra and Daracha is where Talila is located. Wanjak Arsa is where Atoma is located. And we're super excited about the progress which is being made in Atoma. Atoma station is surrounded by farmers, which is really we're pretty lucky and fortunate to be there. So it allows us to work more closer to farmers and have more agro project. More and more farmers are delivering cherries to our station comparatively to even more than what was delivered to Talila. We still continue to do daily lot separation by Cabalets, so we can offer transparency. So for all our lots, I can't tell you this bag belongs to this producer, but I can definitely tell you this lot is made up of these producers, since we're doing daily lot separations. But this harvest, we're trying to get single producer lots as well, because some of the farmers in that Wanjak Arsa area have larger land size. So if that's the case, hopefully we'll have single farmer lots as well as women produced lots. So we're trying to hopefully we'll have a lot or two of all women coffee farmers from that area. And so the first year, this will be our third year at Atoma. The first year we only did naturals, very small volume. We started late. Last year we did honey and washed, which is with a Pinagos machine. So it was also the first time using Pinagos, which is better for the environment, eco-friendly machines. So this year we're going to be doing washed, honey, naturals, and some experimental lots at Atoma. And hopefully you get a chance to visit.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yes, for sure. Maybe you can, because I'm not sure everyone who might listen to our conversation will actually have an understanding of what happens at a washing station. Maybe you can run us quickly through the process of what all of what you just said actually means. So you're working with farmers locally, coffee farmers, and they bring you coffee cherries. And then what happens
So
at the washing station?
So there's two ways we were purchasing cherries. Before the season starts, we train our agents because the majority of coffee is also purchased by agents. Wanja Garza is a particular neighborhood inside of Gera. So it's called Gabale, but there's like Tumateso, Genji Chala, Yukro. So we can buy any coffees throughout the Gera district, and we can bring those coffees directly to the Atoma station, or we can bring it to the Talila station. But we're trying to sort of separate the lots that we bring to Talila and the lots that we bring into Atoma, just to make it simpler for us. So we're working on more cabales that are closer to the Wanja Garza, like which would be Wanja Garza, Tumateso, Kola, and then in the others in the Talila site, we're focusing more on like Genji Chala, which is a very well-known cabale for producing high quality. And there's Gura Queso is a new cabale that we did this year, which is even higher altitude than Genji Chala. But so before the season starts, agents get training on what sort of cherries that we're looking for. So we're trying to purchase the best possible cherries that are out there. So our agronomist, who's also head of coffee for us, he's a plant scientist. He's a plant scientist by background. He's a Q grader. He's helping run the washing stations. So when agents, when they're purchasing on our behalf, they have a strict protocol on cherry selection. They'll bring those cherries directly to our washing stations from particular cabales. They'll make sure they write down the producers' names, so that way we can input that and have traceability behind the coffees. When the coffees come, they're pulped by different cabales. So on this particular tank, we have several tanks. On one tank, there can be X cabale like Genji Chala. Another tank can be Ukro. And depending on the station, so Talila has our guard machine is an older machine, so the fermentation time is longer. It could be 36 hours, it could be 42 hours. With the Pinagos machine, after we pulp, is usually we let it sit for about 12 hours. Literally, you can pulp and take out the coffee, but when you do that, you lose the profiles of the coffees. The coffees just are sort of bland. They lose character. Once the coffees are pulped and they go to a skin drying table and they're picked, some defects are initially picked, then the coffees will go to a drying African beds where they're dried for roughly 2 weeks. So every day we'll give it sunlight from like basically 8 o'clock in the morning to 11:30. Then it's covered depending on the intensity of the sun from until about 1:30, 2 o'clock. Then again, it's sun dried until roughly 5 p.m. And if it's raining, obviously it's covered. So we're doing this and we're trying to get the coffee to a moisture level of 10.5. We're pretty anal about that. And we're also anal about water activity. So our goal for the export side is to try to get it to 9.5 to 10, but we're trying to get it to 10.5. Once it reaches that moisture level, the coffees are put in Ecotac bags. Everything we use Ecotac liners to preserve quality, and then the coffees will be moved to Addis, and again they're separated so to ensure that we can offer different cabales and to ensure also quality.
All right. Let me dig into some of the aspects of what you said maybe. So at Atoma washing station, you have a new type of pulping machine, you said, right?
Yep. Yeah, the Pinagos eco-friendly machines.
Yes. And can you kind of explain what makes that more eco-friendly, or how does it shorten because does it have an impact on the fermentation process? Did I understand correctly?
It does. It also uses less water. So it's better for the environment. So the chances of obviously we have to be very careful not to pollute the area that we're working in, because we're also getting water from the stream to wash the coffee. So the water has to be clean, but mainly that we don't pollute it so people don't get sick, animals don't die. So it's using less water. It's a more eco-friendly machine compared to the old agar machines. So with the old agar machines, we have to let it ferment for a longer period of time. So, and we're also trying to find what is the best. So what we noticed at least last year, and again, last year was our first year using the Pinagos machine for our operation, was that we found the old agar machines to be a little bit better for honey process. So we're also using it for honey process. So we're now going to try to focus more of the honey coffees at the Toledo station and try to focus more of the wash coffees at the Atoma station. But it's the mission.
The difference being maybe just to again give that extra bit of information for honey processed coffee. Not all of the pulp of the cherries is removed from the seed, but some of the pulp stays on the seed, right?
Yeah, and also yes, also I mean there's different types of honeys. There's red honey and like white honey. So the red honey is going to have more pulp, and also it's dry fermentation. So you pulp it. There's no water into it. It goes in a tank. It sits there for we're roughly doing 8 hours. So, but we're gonna try to experiment. We'll try to do it a little bit more. So I think the more time but you have to be careful so it's not over fermented.
Really monitor the heat development and all of those things that can happen during that fermentation process. Yeah.
Exactly. Correct.
And then the new machine, the Pinagos machine, is it too thorough, or why do you think is the other machine still a little bit better for the honey processed coffees?
I mean, I'm not a machine expert, but for just also the other machine, we've used it several years, so we have better experience of using that machine. Yeah. And also the way the two sites are set up is very different. The Toledo site is more flat, so we're also closer to the water supply source. Where in Toledo, I mean with Atoma, we're over 100 meters from the water supply source. So we have a hose running down and using a pump to pull the water in. So the chance of contamination at Atoma is very, very limited. We also have we have lagoons in place, so it's almost no contamination at all. But with Toledo, we're closer to the water source, and so using in a place like that, honeys makes more sense since we need less water. So there's less and less chance of any sort of contamination, and we're lucky. We've never had those kind of incidents, but we always have to be proactive so that never happens. Because I mean
and is it? I mean, I'll come back to why contamination is a risk in the first place, but seeing that you do have to have some sort of access to water, is water scarcity an issue in the areas that you operate in, or is it really more about the contamination aspect of it?
No, it's not. But for washing station, obviously, if you establish a washing station, you need a water access. And so basically, if we have the water access, maybe the adjacent washing station may not be able to use the same water access. So for nationals, it doesn't really matter. You just need land. It's pretty simple. So because we're using the same stream, another operation cannot use that same stream. So it's not that there's not enough water, but it's just you can't just put so many washing stations in the same area.
Okay, that makes sense.
You won't get the permission by the government, the local government, to establish a washing station. And they're also they check the local government comes and checks to make sure that you have everything in place, that you're not hurting the environment or you're not hurting people.
Yeah, so that makes sense. That's good to know. And then back to the contamination aspect. I mean, it's really good to know that you're taking precautions, making sure that you have lagoons in place, I guess, to run the wastewater through some sort of natural filtration, I assume. That's what I've heard from other places. But maybe we can go back to the question of, because again, maybe some of our listeners don't actually know a lot about coffee processing. What exactly is it that might contaminate the water? Like what within the processing of coffee creates contamination in water?
As outputs of the coffee work. So when we're pulping, everything that comes out, we don't want it to go to the river. or the stream.
Yeah, that's mostly the cherry pulp, right?
Yeah, and also the cherry pulp with the newer Pinagos machines, it really separates it. So it separates it in a good way that we can also use it for like cascara if we wanted to. Which we're gonna maybe try to do some little bit of cascara just as an experimental project. But there's a lot of toxics that can contaminate the water, and which is obviously that water is going to be used by people as a source of drinking water, as well as cattle are going to be drinking that water. So any sort of toxins that can possibly get there, you'll get fined, or you have a lot of different kind of penalties that can incur. But the main thing is that it doesn't hurt people. So
but just to be clear, this isn't. I mean, I assume. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's not about toxins as in chemicals that are used.
No, definitely
not practices.
No. So by default, Ethiopia is considered, or all the coffees are considered organic, because nobody's using inputs to help grow coffee.
Yeah, so it's mainly during the fermentation that sets in during the processing. There is acidity that develops, and so the water that comes out of that process is fairly acidic. And so in that sense, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding, that it can be toxic to plants because of the pH and because of maybe like molds and things like that.
I mean, I think it's more toxic, not to like sort of the plants. It's going to be toxic for the water, for drinking water. So I mean, yeah, because a lot of the waste you can use for organic inputs.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So which this year also we're trying to have a way of separating organic inputs, so that way we can give it back to farmers. One, they can collect it. We would love it if they collect it for free. But even if people don't collect it, we can actually physically take it and start giving it to farmers. It's sort of a win-win. It's a win-win situation for all of us, because it's gonna have better yields, and we'll have better sources of coffee for us as well. So it helps the farmers and helps our washing station as well.
Yeah. So does that mean you're gonna try and make compost out of the byproducts then?
Exactly. And we have a guy that's going to be helping us. Even the government gives out, you can get worms from the government, so it's great for composting.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have a guy that's actually helping us with to try to get us in compliance with the EUDR, the EU deforestation. So in that aspect, he's also another guy who's a plant scientist. He's an ex Sukafina guy, ex-Mercon guy. So he's working as a consultant for us to help us with many aspects of trying to be more efficient and trying to do better for the community and also for our clients.
All right. Yeah. You've touched on the EUDR regulations. Maybe you can fill us in on that, because here in the UK, we are not as concerned with that anymore, because it's an EU regulation, right?
It is a EU. Yeah, exactly.
Deforestation laws that are being passed as of, is it end of this year, or maybe you can give us an overview.
Exactly. So it's going to be enforced starting December 24th, 2024. So in a few months, and it's not just coffee. There's other commodities. There's several commodities such as cacao, soybeans, palm oil, other commodities. So we must ensure that the coffees that we're exporting to the EU market must be from land that is not deforested since December 31st, 2020. So they're going to check it from that period onwards. And it's really a big task. In case of Ethiopia, I believe there's roughly or slightly more than 7 million farmers. So to try to get that kind of information, the majority being farmers with less than 1 hectare. So for farmers with less than 3 hectares, we have to get GPS coordinates. For farmers that have over 3 hectares, we have to get the polygon. So that's a massive task. And we have to prove that each lot is deforestation free, which is really it's an extra burden for farmers, it's extra burden for producers and exporters. which will require a lot more human resource as well as require a lot of financial resources.
Let's talk about what it's actually aimed at, this regulation. I guess it's supposed to make sure that no native forest is removed in favor of coffee plantations, basically, right?
And not just coffee, but other commodities as well.
In our case, coffee, but in general,
for sure.
Those
Correct.
big commodities that contribute to deforestation worldwide. This EU regulation aims to stymie deforestation on behalf of commodities like palm oil, like cacao, like coffee. And
correct.
This is basically, I guess, some of the, I don't even know how to say it, but unintended consequences that a lot of the burden of implementing this, everything that needs to happen to comply with this regulation falls on the farmers, right? And there is costs involved, and there's loads and loads of work involved, and it kind of feels like, not just in Ethiopia, but worldwide, that farmers and local agents have just kind of been left with this huge burden of how to be compliant with this regulation.
Correct. I believe so.
Yeah. But I mean, if we look at the aim of the whole regulation effort, what is your estimation on how that actually applies to Ethiopia? Do you, like, in the whole country, in your time of working in coffee, have you seen a lot of deforestation that takes place in order to plant coffee and make coffee plantations, or what's your impression?
Not at all. I mean, we're working in the Oromia region, which is the biggest region for coffee, and the government is very strict. Even like for chopping down trees, people can get sent to prison. So vice versa, they're very, very strict. Obviously, you need some space to plant coffees, but you have to get permission when you have to cut any sort of trees. So they just don't allow you to do that. Actually, Ethiopia is planting trees all over, like every year, just as a government policy, not just this administration, but previous administration they're really going green. So there's always days that currently Prime Minister wants everybody to plant trees. Addis, even though it's the capital city, more trees have been planted. Every year, there's more and more trees being planted. So that's not a big issue for Ethiopia. I mean, obviously deforestation and global warming, all of those are big issues in this world. But I think Ethiopia is in a pretty good position. The problem is getting that, proving it, right? It's like proving that data is like organic certification. By default, most of Ethiopian farms are organic because nobody's using chemicals. But you have to get it proved. You have to get somebody to say this is what it is, and it's not just chemicals. There's so many things associated with, for example, organic. But for this instance, it's just that the amount of resources that's needed, the amount of financial resources that's needed is just a lot for a country that has millions of smallholder farmers. And, putting burdens on the people that need the less, and people that actually have the less impact. It's like global warming. Africa, the continent, has probably doesn't pollute that much comparably. I think we could all do a better job, but we all face the burden of it. And I think, I mean, all of us in this world do want more trees. We want our environment to be sustainable for the future, and that's a global issue.
All right. Well, maybe we can come back to your enterprise then, and now that you said you have several sites now, several washing stations. What are your plans for the future then? How is Addis Exporters going to be developing business and operations going forward? Any more washing stations in the planning?
So there's this partnership we have with Waji, where we started actually around 3 years ago, a company called Greenspring, and Greenspring is a name of a a place in Maryland where I grew up. So the name just sounded really good to us. So the entity is called Greenspring. So Addis Exporter is 50% shareholder. Chore Waji is 50% shareholder. The station is located in Uraga in Guji, which is extremely high. So the beans are really tiny, very condensed beans, extremely difficult to get to. It takes from Addis, we're driving about 12 hours. Where Gera, where we have our stations, are pretty simple to get to. One road is they're making an asphalt from Jama to all of Gera, which is going to make it much more easier. But get to Jama is 30 minutes flight, 35 minutes flight. To get to Agaro is 30 minutes drive. Agaro is where most of the Tokuma groups are based. Then to get to Gera is another 20 something minutes. So basically we can get to from Jama to Gera maybe in an hour these days. And infrastructure is becoming better and better. Guji has great coffees. It just takes you a long time to get there. I mean, you can fly now to like Hawassa and makes it easier to get there. But so that's something new that we hope to have running more efficiently starting this harvest. And we're really want to expand the work we're doing with the Tokuma group, which is comprised of smallholder coffee farmers with over 3 hectares of land. And these are farmers that secured export license to export directly to the international market. So for these farmers, we serve as a service provider for them. We're offering processing, training on processing. We're doing sampling, quality control, packaging, transportation, documentation, all while the farmers maintain ownership. So people that you've also bought copies from, I believe in the past, Mansour and Nesru, they're smallholder farmers. We have zero access to their cash, so it's very transparent. We're charging 12% service fee, which includes those services, but so all the costs we incur, we have zero access to their proceeds. So there's no question that usually buyers want to ask, how much is the producer paid? The producer is paid whatever you're willing to pay him or her, minus our service fees. And we're witnessing positive changes. They're making a bigger part of the pie. They're getting a better income. They're diversifying. They're able to send their children to better schools. They're hiring more local people. I think even for sustainability of the coffee industry, it's really important to empower farmers because washing stations, you're operating for 3 or 4 months, then you're closed. Farmers are there throughout the year, so it's really vital for the industry, and you're seeing more and more people doing these kind of work. So which is really great, and thanks for like our import partners as well as roasters like you that are buying these coffees.
And so the Tokuma group, they are individual farmers, and how do they process their coffee then? Just to kind of recap on that a little bit, do they have a washing station, or how do they process it?
Most of the farmers don't have a washing stations. They're smallholder farmers, so washing station stuff is also requires more financial resources. Some do have small like handheld pulpers, but for the most part they're doing nationals, and they're for the most part most of them are second generation or even third generation farmers. Most of them inherited the land from their parents, so it's sort of part of what they are as people being coffee farmers. So they do a really good job of drying natural coffees, and most of the coffees are 86 plus coffees. Their majority of the coffees will be coming directly from their farms, or they can buy some coffees from outgrowers. So we like to distinguish those as well. And we're very strict on protocols that they have to comply with. Again, moisture, water activity being high in terms of compliance. And but it's a good business for us as well, because it has to be sustainable for us to keep doing that business. And for farmers, because farmers have X amount of avenues of selling their cherries. They can sell it to local suppliers. They can sell it to people like us. We can buy cherries from them. They can be part of a union, which most of them were part of a union, or for the ones that do have export license, they can find an international market and try to export their coffees. And so we're seeing that they're making so much more income, which is great. I think the ultimate goal is obviously we want to have really top coffees. We want to have coffees 87 plus, but more than anything, we want to see people's lives improve. I mean, that's number one, is that their lives are improving, and they do coffee processing, producing is such a difficult work. Before we had a washing station, I mean, I've been to maybe 100 washing stations in my life. You go there, you come, when you come as a guest, everything looks so great. Everybody's showing you 100% ripe cherries. So everything looks simple, but when you're running a washing station, it's a lot of work, or if you're a farmer, it's a lot of work. I mean, and during the harvest, we start working from 7 a.m. and most people go to sleep around 3 a.m., 4 a.m. sometimes.
It's just relentless, huh?
Yeah. During the harvest, especially there's in the peak time, there's no sleep. You just gotta work really hard.
And how long does the harvest season last in the Gera district?
A few months. Usually from like October until the end of December.
Okay, and there's only one harvest, right?
Yeah, there's only one harvest.
Yeah, but for most of the farmers you work with at your washing stations, does that mean it's the annual income that is produced during those months then?
For most of them, because most of them are very much dependent on coffee. Some have other things that they do. You're seeing more and more farmers enter cropping, like different kinds of foods like mangoes, papayas, bananas. Gera is also very well known for honey. I think Gera has one of the best honeys probably in the world that I've tasted. So they do have some do have other source of income, but the majority of the income is heavily dependent on coffee.
And the other sources of income, that's local for the domestic market, is it?
Yes, for the most part, yeah.
All right. And then, I mean, I think the work you do with the Tokuma group is really interesting in the sense that you're a service provider in that working relationship. And I think the biggest benefit they get from you is that you can connect them to the global market, right? They can find international buyers through you, which would be a lot more difficult if they actually set out on their own, I suppose, to find those buyers.
Correct, but correct. But as any of them, in time, everybody is like going to school, right? You graduate, so when you get to a certain level, you may not need our service, and which will be very happy that you're seeing more and more of the farmers actually now they're on social media. Some of them have their own Instagram page. They're getting better awareness of the global market, and which I think is awesome. It should be, because at the end of the day, it'd be great. You're communicating with a farmer in the middle of Jimma, or middle of Ethiopia, or middle of Sidamo, or middle of Guji, and we're providing a service for both of you. And so this is, I think, the way coffee, hopefully the coffee future will be more of that, where farmers to have a better livelihood, because we all talk about the farmers' livelihood, but we seem not to do enough work to actually make it sustainable for them.
Yeah, I guess also because it's complex and it's different places, right? But that shouldn't be an excuse or a reason not to do the work, right? So
for sure, and it is very challenging for all of us in the industry. I mean, I think sometimes a farmer will see that a roaster selling coffee 250 grams at $20, and it's like a pound of my coffee is being sold at $3, at $4. But the reality is, it's so complex and so challenging. Even for roasters, there's so much competition. Your overhead is so different. So it's not like, I think most people in coffee are in it because they're passionate about it. They want to do something positive. And it's not like most people are making a bonanza. Most people are surviving.
That's it. Yeah, amazingly, as you said, even if a lot of roasters are charging those prices, I don't think I have yet to meet a specialty coffee roaster who is, just swimming in money and getting rich of what they do. Because as you said, there is always, the overhead is different, things like business rates, and it also depends on where you're based and all of that. But still, I think, again, that's not an excuse to kind of push away the hard truth and fact that the people who do most of the hard work in this value chain don't get enough of the profit in most cases. But that's why I admire people like you who, work diligently to change that situation for so many. And yeah, I think the Tokuma group is a really great example of how that can be achieved. Because also this isn't a group that you founded, right? This is a group of individual farmers who kind of got together as a loose group, everyone holding their own export licenses, but kind of just coming together to have a louder voice in the market, basically. Then they approached you, or you came together with them to provide services that they at that point hadn't had much experience with.
Correct.
And do you think, because you already mentioned that you see this as a good blueprint for how things could move in the market going forward, is that a model that you think could be replicated with other farmers that you work with, the farmers that supply cherries to your washing stations? Do some of them have ambitions, or do they want to start working on their own export licenses? Or
they do, but there's for the success of the Tokuma group, there's many more farmers that do have an export license that never had the opportunity to export. So there's actually it's just the demand. I think sometimes people are reluctant to buy from farmers, assuming they're not going to do a good job. But the reality is, we're taking precautions as well, because if you're a buyer and working with somebody new, there's always a hesitation until you really establish that business relationship. But if the coffee is not the same sample that the farmer initially provided, because once the coffee arrives to my mill, it's easier to have control over it because it's physically sitting in my warehouse until the coffee. So usually what we do is we take samples early, we cup it. Also, they can bring samples to our washing station in Gera, where Fikru, who's a Q grader, he's there. So he can do, initially we're given training, but also he can also give them results of the water activity and also moisture, sort of let them know how the coffee is doing. Also, we have a little lab there as well, so we can do initial cupping to sort of say, you're doing this, improving this, give them some feedbacks right away.
Is this for the Tokuma farmers, or does this apply to some of the farmers that you work with in your washing stations as well?
No, so no, it doesn't. With the farmers we're working with, I mean, what it works is that we give them training in terms of cherry. Then we pay them for our course. We pay them a dividend at the end of the year from the production that we receive from him or her. We'll pay them a dividend. But ownership changes. So once we buy the cherry, it becomes Addis Exporter's cherry, or me as a supplier. It will become ownership changes hand. With the Tokuma group, ownership doesn't change hand. So it's very different. The two models are completely different.
Yeah, but you said in the beginning that you were looking to maybe going forward have a couple of single producer lots from your washing stations as well, right?
Yeah, with that too, but still we're buying the cherries from the farmers. If they do have the license to export directly and we find a market, I mean, we'll be more than happy that they sell it. But most of the farmers are going to be farmers with less than a hectare. So with that, we have to for single producer lots, it has to be a farmer that has a significant amount of coffee that we can actually dry and separate, because a lot of farmers, they can deliver us like a bag of cherries, or 30 kgs or 50 kgs of cherries. So it's almost impossible to sort of separate that kind of volume. And that's our aim this year, is to work with a couple larger single producers and most likely it might be in terms of doing more naturals because it's easier to separate for the wash we're pulping coffees together. Unless you're doing hand pulpers, but still it's very difficult because you have to separate it in beds, and one bed is not going to be. It could be a very small amount of cherries that's delivered on a nightly basis to us.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's a crucial point that you make there, right? That most of the farmers you work with in your washing stations, they just don't have enough volume to sell, so that it really doesn't make sense for them to try and export any of their coffee individually, just because, it's impossible to export small amounts, like you said, 30 kilos of cherries, or so it's basically a lot of farmers that have small coffee gardens rather than actual coffee plantations, or however picture that on this end of the chain.
Yeah, for sure. And we're hoping this year will be a little bit better year than last year in terms of I'm sure you heard about all the shipping and logistics issues last year that not just Ethiopia but so many people faced. But for us, it was more of a challenge, I think, in Ethiopia. One, we're landlocked. Also, the Red Sea was a nightmare. Because vessel lines were being attacked by Houthi rebels. So it was forcing them to either limit or halt their services. And the Red Sea is such an important global trade area. So it accounts for about 10 to 12% of global trade, other than coffee, which is very vital, important to us. Major commodities like crude oil is coming from via the Red Sea. So due to security concerns last year, some of the vessel lines, they were pushed to reroute and go via the southern tip of Africa, so by South Africa. So which increased time and increased cost to us and also to the importer. And there was also a shortage of containers. So there was so many coffees that we had February shipments that we shipped in May, which were ready to be shipped. We were lucky to get early shipments out early. So then we had to resort to using 40-foot containers for smaller volume coffees. It was the first time we ever used 40-feet containers for this, but right now, fortunately, things seem to be normal. So we're hoping this will continue for this harvest and going forward.
All right, that's good news for sure. Yeah, because obviously, I mean, your last year's harvest basically got to Europe, I think, I don't know, just like 6 weeks ago or something, right? Because it was so delayed. I mean, that was a big concern for last season. And for this coming season that you mentioned before we started the recording, that your harvest season looks like it might be starting a little bit earlier this year.
A few weeks. It seems like a few weeks earlier this year. I think we're probably going to start end of September, where usually it could be middle of October to the end of October that it starts. So this year, it doesn't seem like that's the case. So I think in the next 10 days we'll start building beds. So getting the site ready for the new harvest, and which also entails getting financing. And another situation is I'm sure you're aware of Ethiopia did float its currency recently, and that led to that was really big. And this happened a few weeks ago. It actually happened when I came to US. So roughly a month ago, the Ethiopian birr, one US dollar was equivalent to 57.5 Ethiopian birr, and now $1 is equal to 104.6 Ethiopian birr. So in less than a month, it lost 82% of its value, approximately, which is Ethiopia is heavily dependent on imports. So we're importing more than we're exporting. So this is it's concerning, obviously, because it can lead to high inflation. But it's still too early to gauge the full impact. It's something really new. and other ways, Ethiopia is also trying to open up its economy, so to allow foreign entities to come and operate. So tomorrow we might see foreign entities actually engaging in coffee and other things as well, and also foreign banks will start operating as well. So Ethiopia was closed off to foreign banks. It was like the coffee industry, at least in terms of setting up washing stations, stuff like that, was closed off to foreign entities. That's being changed. Exactly how does that work? I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's good in terms of it's going to be better competition. Will hopefully be good for the average Ethiopians in terms of employment. Hopefully, salaries will increase because it's tough. Inflation is, I mean, even being in the U.S., everybody is really concerned about inflation. I mean, even the current coming election, I think the biggest thing, the biggest concern for America more than anything is the economy. And I think that's especially after COVID, we're seeing that everywhere where people are really struggling. It's not just developing countries, but also developed countries. That's the case. And for Ethiopia, still people are still making, being paid in Ethiopian birr. So losing 80-something% of its value is alarming. But hopefully other aspects of it will make up for it, and hopefully the future will get better and better.
And I guess since this is such a recent thing, you're still in the transition phase, I suppose, and it's really hard to gauge the full impact of this. No, I mean, one for people in everyday life, but then also what it means for financing in the coffee world, which in Ethiopia is the most important sector for the national economy. No,
it is. I mean, I think compared to other sectors, we're still pretty fortunate because we're still selling in foreign currency. So even though we're getting Ethiopian birr, we're still selling in dollars. So we're selling, when we send offers, we're sending it per pound in US dollars. So if so before we were getting for $1.57, today we're getting for $1.104. So at least we're much better equipped. But still, our labor costs, I don't know what it is yet. Government is really trying to control price gouging as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you get worried because you worry about the people that you have working for you. Somebody that was making 3,000 birr, what could they buy with that today? Or somebody that was making 10,000 birr, what could they buy for that? Somebody that's making 20,000 birr, what could they buy for that? It's still that's really worrisome for us because we have a lot of employees and we have a lot of daily laborers working for us, especially during the coffee harvest time. So, I mean, in the bigger picture, you worry about the local situation much more. But hopefully, we'll make up for it by the different laws that are being implemented these days. Hopefully, they'll make that better for the average Ethiopian.
Yeah, and then I just read some reports that this year's harvest is expected to be good in terms of the quantity of it as well. And that will certainly have an impact on the price as well, I imagine. No.
Yeah. I mean, again, a lot of the stuff we're also very dependent on the ICE market. So the international market really dictates what the average coffees are being sold at. Obviously, the specialty market is sort of on its own, but yeah, hopefully the higher the ICE market is, the better it is for the country of Ethiopia. Because again, coffee sector, roughly about 50 million people are directly or indirectly dependent on the coffee sector, and from farmers to transport companies to hotels, motels, to marketers. So many people are heavily dependent on the Ethiopian coffee sector.
All right. So Well, yeah, exciting times, but also times to keep your eyes open then, I imagine. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about lots of positive things about your plans for the company and for your washing stations going forward. We've talked about some of the challenges. I guess one of the things we haven't talked too much about yet is the climate crisis and how that might or might not have an impact on Ethiopian coffee. But then I guess shifting harvest times, I suspect, might be an indicator of that having an impact on you as well. Huh? Can you say a little bit about that? Do you see shifts?
In Ethiopia, in the coffee sector, I think comparably, we're still, again, in a better situation, but some areas you're seeing it, you're seeing the impact more. Like you're seeing areas that, like Harar, coffee production that's really went down. Some other parts you're seeing coffee production that's really went down. And I'm assuming, I'm not the best knowledgeable person, so I don't want to say, make up a statement, but I'm assuming that's the impact of climate change. But again, I saw a map of climate change and impact on coffee, where some people were saying we're going to lose coffee by this amount of year. But Ethiopia is still pretty good, I think, comparably to a lot of coffee producing countries. But again, being pretty good is not enough. Then we have to be, all of us have to be, have to do our part, because especially just for foods that we eat, we're going to have enough food moving forward. I mean, for maybe our lifetime is not an issue, but for our children and their children lifetime, the climate change is, you're feeling the effect of it. And we're seeing it in weather patterns in Ethiopia as well, just in the city. But planting more trees, you're seeing it actually also getting a little bit cooler in some areas too.
Yeah, okay. So then what you're saying is that at least in the areas that you operate in, the effects maybe aren't as big yet as in other parts of the country then.
For sure. We haven't seen that impact as of yet.
So when you say that this year the harvest season will probably start a little bit sooner, that's just natural fluctuations that occur?
That does happen. That does happen. And that being said, who knows? Like after a month, maybe we didn't start, because the weather can it can change a little bit, and it can make it. Because last year too, we were assuming we were going to start a little bit earlier, and the reality was it didn't start that much earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But this year it does seem like I'm getting reports, especially since we're trying to get farmers registered to be compliant to export coffee to EU. So since we have some people on the ground, they're definitely seeing some cherries that are pretty ripe. So yeah, this year I think there's no question about it.
All right. Yeah. Good. Well, I mean, fingers crossed. I hope that you'll have a really, really good season in terms of yield, but also I do hope that the financial situation stabilizes soon, and that you can actually make the most of a good harvest season, financially speaking as well. And I mean,
thank you.
We're definitely big fans of the coffees that you bring to market, because they are always very delicious. And it's also good to know that, there are people like you in the background, and the Tokuma farmers as well, who really want to work towards good on all fronts, not just good quality, but also good practices in terms of the environment, and also just good collaboration between people and fairness at the base of everything.
Correct. And thank you. Thank you too. Thank you as well.
And thanks for taking the time today. It was great catching up with you. Thanks for the updates. And
likewise.
Hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again another time.